The chaos and destruction found in Delta Force can be quite confusing and perhaps a little overwhelming for new players. So today I'm bringing you guys a guide and tips on how to stop dying and stay alive longer in this new FPS title. Let's begin with the biggest tip of them all, one that will have quite the drastic effect on your survival rate, potentially your KD, and most definitely on your ability to be an effective team player, and that is, quite simply, slow down. Stop sprinting all the time. There is no need for you to be doing this, and you'll likely come across more players than you can comfortably deal with. You'll be also exposing yourself to far too many angles that your opponents can attack and view you from. Limiting your angles of exposure is easy. Think of it like this. If you approach an area blindly, everyone can see you so easily. However, if you go in like this, perhaps ADSing as you come around the corner or over the hill, you'll be much harder to see. This is limiting angles of exposure. Keep this in mind as you move around the map. It's a very simple technique that can help you out tremendously. Secondly, stop rushing around corners. Peek more often and assess the situation ahead as much as possible. Hopefully in time, by doing this, you'll get a much better feel for the flow of the game. Are you struggling with flow? Well, keep on watching. As you're moving across the map, you want to be using cover as much as possible, not only to hide behind, but to also conceal yourself. Strong players are always using something to cover and or conceal themselves as much as possible. They may not be directly behind an object, but they'll often have something blocking enemies' lines of sight and where enemies tend to approach from. Bushes, walls, signs, cars, whatever you can think of and see can be used. Predicting where your opponents can be and where they can come from is key to surviving the battlefields ahead. We'll come back to that topic just in a moment. In the real world, in the real game, it's not always that simple. Sometimes you've just got to fight, and here's a few pointers when it comes to infantry. Don't be afraid to use movement to your advantage. Crouch in the middle of a fight, crouch bounce where you bounce up and down, even drop to the floor if you have to. Moving left to right, often known by PC players as ADAD spam, can be highly effective in close quarters. If your opponent's moving, maybe you should move. Not a general rule, but it's a good idea to keep in mind. Sometimes though, when people are dancing everywhere, sometimes it's good to just stand still, aim at them, let them make themselves look a bit silly and just take them out easily. Okay, back to learning about flow and situational awareness. Learning to anticipate where your opponents are going to be, where they can come from, and what they can do is how we do that. Don't be overwhelmed. It's fairly straightforward once you get the hang of it. In this mode, it may be more chaotic than King of the Hill, however your opponents will always come from one side of the map, and in this case, it's much easier to get to grips with the combat in Delta Force. On this map, for example, attackers come from this side and defenders from over here. Hotspots will be inside these areas on objectives and where your team is bunching up. So do try to move up the map with this knowledge in mind. If your team is all bunching up on the minimap, expect there to be lots of action and people holding angles. If the map is a little empty, this is your time to shine and flank your opponents. The map is taken and the game won by the sum of each individual soldier's actions out there on the battlefields. You cannot take the whole buildings by yourself, but you can push up the map, pick piece by piece, and eventually capture the whole. Don't try to be too clever or overthink it though. It is in the bite-sized actions that separate the more advanced players from the beginners. If you can push a flag from one side, you can take a piece. Push a player back, rinse and repeat, and the flag is yours. Don't be overwhelmed, think in smaller plays. This is pretty much the approach and playstyle needed on this map here. The tunnels are exactly where you need to play like this. Piece after piece, bit after bit, and you'll take the whole. Predicting your opponent's actions, the moves they can make, and where they can come from is key to your survival. Often players call this game sense or situational awareness. If you're brushing up on your skills or even perhaps new to the game, predicting where your opponents can come from is a lot easier than where they'll exactly be. So for example, you spawn this side, your team has this flag or area, enemy has this, they'll tend to spawn and come from this direction. Keep this in mind as you spawn in. Do this again and again, spawn after spawn, and over time, you'll develop greater awareness of where your opponents will be coming from. Of course, that sounds so simple. To further develop this knowledge, know this. Players tend to do quite predictable things. If there's a tower to snipe from, expect it. If there's an angle in the trench to hold, expect it. That's it. Players tend to behave in predictable ways. It's up to you to find those ways of playing, mess around and play with them, and capture your opponents off guard. And this is really important to improving your aim and tracking. If you can look at an opponent, build your knowledge of how they move, how fast they move across the screen, how quickly they change direction, you'll be much better at improving your aim as well. You don't want to be staring at the minimap all the time in this game, but a quick glance every so often is a great way to improve game sense. When no action is happening is generally a good rule to have a quick look. See if enemies are nearby and also what parts of the map are playable. So here you can see the tunnels. Enemies are going to come from these directions. Keep that in mind. It's really that simple. Same goes for looking around the map. Here is the train carriage. Enemies have to be behind or around the sides. If you can kind of learn to blank off certain bits of information around and in front of you, you can start to develop better awareness and faster reaction times. Like here, for example, no one is around, quite open. Enemies must be coming from these tunnels here. So essentially, it's all about learning to read the map and ignoring the information you don't need to think about. When you see a big streak or a great objective play, these are often achieved through these small decisions and plays I've just mentioned. Knowing the enemy spawns allows you to move more effectively around the map. Understanding player behavior fine-tunes the actions you take against your opponents. Combine these together and you'll become a much better player. A good example, you're pushing through the trenches, you take down a player. What do opponents tend to do? They slow down and try to catch you off guard. Expect it. Sniper tower, expect to be sniped. Capturing an objective, where can they come from? Have a little think about it, but don't get caught up in your head. You learn by doing. You want better aim, you want to learn how to capture objectives better, then do it. Don't sit back or be defensive all the time. Take action, take fights, go for that hard shot you're probably going to miss. We learn by doing. When it comes to capturing objectives, often many players just rush to the flag, get shot, or rush straight to the middle, get seen, get taken out. It's okay not to capture on the first approach. It's okay to jump off the flag if you have to. Maybe even trip the flag, that's where you just step on it for a moment, get off it, and come back later, and see if any opponents have reacted to your actions. If you're in a sticky situation, on your own perhaps, or just too many people around you, this is a great way to get enemies to move. So for example, you're on the trench map, you're pushing in, don't know where the enemies are inside, you're on your own, you trip the flag, people will peek, and use that to your advantage. Once you learn the map, once you learn the places where people tend to hide, this will become so much easier. Often, the big objective players are doing just that, trying to find the weak spots in your opponents and using it against them. Tripping the flag is a major awesome strategy. You need to be doing it more of. Again, it's so important to remember you don't always have to commit to always making a play. Whether it's capturing a flag or trying to shoot an opponent across the map, you can always come back, reposition, readjust, and go from there. Remember, you don't always have to commit. You want an extra secret hard tip? Learn where the center of your screen is, and I mean really knowing where it is. This is where you aim, track your targets, and position your crosshair ready for engagements. The better you know where this is, the potentially faster your snapping to targets will be, lining up for headshots will be more consistent, and have your crosshair ready more often. A soldier may not come by, but you'll be ready if they do. Being ready is half the battle. Good luck out there. If you enjoyed this guide, do be sure to drop a like, make sure to subscribe for live streams and videos, and I hope to see you again. Take it easy, guys. Have a good day.